Yes, indeed, you're still the one. Beautiful song there by Shania Twain. Just setting the tone for conversation here. And of course, live, it is Thursday, and you know, every Thursday we have In the Market coming your way. Hello, good morning. My name is Debarl Inea. I trust you slept easy, woken up well, ready to face this good day that we've been afforded by the good Lord. So we have a lot lined up for you today. But interestingly enough, right, the EACC has embarked on the use of Bible study to boost the Commission's fight against corruption. The Commission, chaired by retired Anglican Archbishop Elodu Abukala, launched the Bible study guide together with the interreligious sector yesterday. The study guide, titled Integrity, a Weapon Against Corruption, will be put to use by groups and individuals dealing with corruption matters. The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission said on Twitter, quote-unquote, the Bible study guide is intended to help Kenyans interact with the Bible and discover God's position on corruption and His direction on living a corruption-free life. The Commission said every moment of the society has an opportunity to contribute to the success of the war against corruption. EACC said Kenya is losing a third of its state budget, the equivalent of about 608 billion shillings, to corruption every year. Kenya has a history of multi-million-dollar scandals that have failed to result in high-profile convictions. This will be the basis, and of course, a raft of other issues here on AM Live, looking at the fight against corruption. We're losing 608 billion shillings annually. That can actually go a long way trying actually to alleviate the situation that we are currently in as far as the wage bill is concerned. Also, that 3 trillion shilling budget as well. So that will be the basis of our corruption, on debt, corruption, the Bible, and as well as the future of the economy of Kenya. We started with so much debt that remains to be also a bigger portion of our discussion today. So will you chime in? Head over to a Twitter handle. AM Live NTV is a Twitter handle. AM Live NTV is a profile name on Facebook. And also 20686 is our SMS portal. I walk over there, but of course on my touchscreen you can see this is what we do have. The EACC Anti-Graft Body introduces Bible study in the fight against corruption. This is today's editorial cartoon, but allow me now to go to the dailies as well, just to show you what we have on the front page of the Daily Nation. Exam weeks away, no cash for test kits. Or test kit, it says. Education PS Belio Kipsang says schools will receive crucial funding soon, but practical papers start in 24 days. But teachers are yet to receive money to buy test tubes, gases, and other materials. And at a glance, risk practical exams will start on October 22nd and run until November the 1st. School heads say suppliers are reluctant to provide them with goods and services. Also, candidates, a total of 1.7 million candidates will sit the national exams, 1,060,787 of them for KCPE, and the remaining 663,811 for KCAC in 10,075 centers. Briefing. NEC Chairman George Magoha is scheduled to give a briefing in Nairobi this morning on the council's preparation for exams. Also, we have reactions. NAT Secretary General Wilson Sosion and Kesha Chairman Indimuli asked the government to release funds to end chaos in education sector. This story, as I've mentioned, you have it on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Nation. Also inside, who's the cheat now? That's the abiding question there. How Ministry of Education stole a multi-million shilling idea to curb exam fraud from young developers. It's all about plagiarism as well. You can find all the details also inside the Daily Nation today. Also, Mr. Joseph Irungu Elias Jowi, when he appeared before Kiambu Senior Principal Magistrate Stella Tambo Otieno yesterday, he was remanded at Muthaiga Police Station for 10 days pending investigations. And you can see his picture here. Also, it says TV journalists sought in city murder probe. Detectives were last evening looking for television journalist Jackie Maribe as investigations into the murder last week of a woman in Nairobi's Kilimani neighborhood gathered steam. Miss Maribe is the fiancée of Mr. Joseph Irungu Kuria, the prime suspect in the killing of 28-year-old Monica Kimani, who was found dead last week. You have this story on page 2 of the Daily Nation today. Also, Supreme Court keeps Mutua Ndeti guessing. Top judges say verdict on Machako's election dispute, which questions the validity of governor's victory last year, will be made on notice. And end of road for Bokper at United. That is a probing question. I should read it. End of the road for Bokper at Man U. The story continues on page 59 of the Daily Nation today. Quick look at the Standard. And this is what we have on the front page of the Standard. TV star sought fiancé held over murder. And you have the picture there of the Citizen anchor. And it says, the probe detectives knocked on the door of Jackie Maribe and her fiancé, who is in police custody, but she wasn't in and her phones were not going through. Her boyfriend was presented in a Kiambu court yesterday. You can follow that story on page 6 of the Standard this morning. And the investigation is ongoing. This is a picture of Joseph Irungu, who was yesterday detained for 10 days as police seek more information on his possible involvement in last week's murder of Monica Kimani. All the gritty details I've mentioned or you can follow that on page 6 of the Standard today. Also, we can look at the teaser. Obado humbled in remand cells. Governor subjected to indignity of common criminal suspects as the endures body search, low quality food, and sharing of mattresses. He was spared drab prison uniform on first day and allowed guests. Also, traders told to sell maize flour at 75 shillings per 2 kgs. Cabinet Secretary orders millers to reduce prices as supply pushes costs down despite rise in fuel tax. That is another story that you want to follow also on the front page of the Standard today. Also, TV star Bill Cosby gets 10 years. That is another story that you want to follow inside the Standard today. A quick look at what we have on the front page of the Citizen. Pressure to remove Obado divides ODM. This is a splash. Supportive MCAs hit back with motion to impeach County Assembly clerk. Also, Secretary General Sifuna says party to wait for court process. Bad MP Wanga wants him out. That story continues on page 4 of the Star. Also, Matiang'i reassures police of welfare. You can see him here holding court with officers from Eastern Region on police reforms at the Kenya School of Government in Embu yesterday. Maribe's fiancé Joey remanded for 10 days is another story that you want to follow also inside the Star today. And politicians divided on Raila's call for referendum. The political class is split on opposition leader Raila Odinga's call for referendum next year. The ODM Supremo called for a controversial constitutional referendum to expand the executive, while some politicians across the divide have supported it. Others, like DP Ruto, have opposed it as disruptive and dangerous. That story continues on page 6 of the Star today. People Daily up next, and this is your splash today. A quick look at that. Let me try and just lift it for you. There you go. Top state farms yet to publish tender details. Of course, this was a directive from the president, but it still remains to be seen if actually the state farms will do that or follow the order of the president. Non-compliance in breach of President Kenyatta's June directive. Kenya's richest state corporations and agencies are yet to comply with President Uhuru Kenyatta's directive to publish online details of the multi-billion shilling tenders they award. Mr. Kenyatta issued the directive in June, and publication of the contract details on a designated public procurement website. You can follow that story on page 4 of the Business Daily this morning. Also, taxes push up bank charges. Kenyan banks are racing to implement the doubling of excess taxes on fees they levy on transactions following the signing into law of the Finance Bill 2018 in a move that is expected to significantly increase the cost of banking. Some of the lenders, including KCB, CDN and Diamond Trust, have notified their customers of the decision to increase charges on all transactions beginning Tuesday this week. Of course, also I got my notice as well. And you can follow that story on page 4 of the Business Daily. There is a standalone picture here, murder charge, and you can see Joseph Irungu, Elias Joey at the Kiambu Law Court yesterday, where he was charged with the murder of Monica Nyawira Kimani at Luciana on Dennis Pritt Road in Nairobi last Wednesday. The absence in suit risk 2 billion shillings Taxpayers face 2 billion shillings loss after the state failed to defend a suit where a Nairobi-based manufacturer is seeking compensation following the ban on the use of plastic bags. This story continues on page 6 of the Business Daily this morning. While also 14.6 billion shillings in forex reserve fall in the last 3 weeks following lowering of the country's import cover to 5.6 months. Also, SBM inherits, or I should actually start with the toilet success in Kenya still low since 2000 efforts to ensure that every Kenyan has access to a proper toilet have yielded little results, with statistics showing that 48.7% of the population still defecated in the open. You can actually follow this story on page 12 and 13. Wonder if today is International Toilets Day. I do not know, but you can follow all the gritty details there on page 12 and 13 as well. SBM inherits 13 billion shillings. Chest bad loans. Mauritian lender SBM, Bank of Kenya, I should say, will have to find a way to turn the 13 billion shillings bad loans picked from Chest Bank to performing loans or take a hit. That story continues on page 19 of the Business Daily today. So make sure you grab a copy for this story as well. Let's cross over now to other regions, but let me try also and pick the Taifa Leo so that you can see what is on the front page of Taifa Leo as well. Sharon alivyotekwa is the story. Upande wa mashtaka wasimulia hatua kwa hatua jinsi marehemu alivyoongozwa na mshukiwa kwenda kuuawa. That is the story that you want to follow on page 6 of Taifa Leo. Also, Uhuru kuachia kila Mkenya deni la laki 150,000. That is in 2022. You can follow that story on page 3 of Taifa Leo. Also, mshukiwa wa mauaji ya kinyama kukaa rumande is a story that you want to follow also on page 2. Let's continue and see what also we have across the region. We can head over to Tanzania, where we have a Citizen for you. Dar tycoons, top investors in Kenyan telecoms giant Aunali and Sajad Rejabali, who bought 10 million shillings shares in April, now hold a total of 21.1 million shares, valued at 527 million shillings. That story continues on page 2 of the Citizen this morning. Also, MNH's separation of conjoined twins puts tech in focus. Doctors at Muhimbili National Hospital say their assessment and separation of conjoined twins is now easier and more successful due to advancing technology, but the hospital fails to handle complex cases due to a shortage of specialists who can operate on children. You have this story continuing on page 2 of the Citizen in Tanzania. Also, Minister warns bogus MV Nyerere survivors. That is a story that you want to follow on page 2. Actually page 3 of the Citizen, and you can see also the related picture of the MNH story also here on the front page of the Citizen. Government reveals difficulties in reaching oil gas deals. This story continues on page 2 of the Citizen in Tanzania. And also we have Mwananchi still in Tanzania for you there. Balaa jingine, raia afa mikononi mwa polisi. Right, maybe this is extrajudicial killings. The story, you can follow it on page 4 of Mwananchi, still in Tanzania. We cross over now to Uganda, where we have the Daily Monitor for you. Government bans treatment of ministers abroad. Experts have advised government to focus on national health insurance scheme for all Ugandans and funding public health facilities. That story continues on page 4 of the Daily Monitor in Uganda. I want to show you also what is headlining this week's The East African. Just a quick look there. I can try and lift it for you so that you can see what is inside there. The East African this week is holding this particular splash for you. I'll try and gather it quickly for you so that you can see what is actually. This is a story. Canada pulls out of funding deal for Uganda bombardiers. or bombardiers. We are not participants, they say. The credit agency first asked for a 2-week extension to deliver the term sheet. This story continues on page 10 of the East African. And you can see there over also 130 dead, dozens missing after ferry capsizes off Mwanza. This is another story that you want to follow. And of course, that number has risen, as we've always said, since this went to press on Friday. It was starting at 130, but that has increased to 227. Navigating Lake Victoria has become a matter of trial and error, with ancient navigation routes dating back to the 19th century. You have this story continuing on page 4 of the East African today, or this week. Also still on the front page of the East African, Audi launches new car, and Tesla's nose, BMW and Mercedes are also bringing out crossovers. You can look at the story on page 21, 24 and 25 of the East African. Let's see what we have also as editorial cartoons, right? We can begin with what is in the Star, and this is what has been drawn. I think this is an old one. Let me try and pick today's so that you can see. This is actually today's. This is what we started with. Anti-graft body introduces Bible study in the fight against corruption. Will it bring any discernible difference? This is what we have on the front page or on the editorial pages of the dailies today. Actually, this is on page 2, not the editorial page of the Star. You can follow that particular editorial cartoon there. I want also to show you what we have in the People Daily, and quick look there. Let me just try and lift it up quickly for you so that you can see it. This is what we have in the Daily Nation. Then we'll go to the People Daily. As Permanene's drawing today, everyone is rushing to pay dowry, right? You never know with the current government, anything could happen, right? So people now rushing to pay dowry because they might also slap taxes on dowry. It says, yeah, before the government imposes dowry or dowry VAT. So everyone is carrying their mbuzis and also condos, right, to the in-laws as well. Okay, let's see what also we do have inside the People Daily, and this is what has been drawn today by Stano. All right, it's all about Inga and his promise going to Canaan, right? You can see his truck was fully loaded, but now everyone is departing from that particular truck because of fuel taxes as well, and the agreement right now, or maybe the handshake, right? And this is what Stano has actually captured for us inside the People Daily today. Right, let's move on and we see what we have. Oh, lastly, I think those are the only cartoons I have today. So you can grab a copy of the Daily Nation and a copy also of the Star, or whichever paper that really fancies your, or tickle your fancies. Right, let's see what we have in the highlights for you. Government says 2 kg packet of unga should not retail for more than 75 shillings. Also, Joseph Irungu locked up for another 10 days despite his bullet wound. Right, we shall continue. We gave you the wrong highlights this morning, but we continue also with today's story where Migori Governor Okoth Obado's personal assistant, Michael Oyamo, has been detained or denied murdering Sharon Otieno when he took a plea at the Milimani Law Courts. Oyamo has been remanded until October the 8th when he will appear, I should say, in court for his bail application hearing, while his boss is scheduled to attend his bail application ruling on Thursday at the same court.
Matters of recusal, we are not yet on that issue yet. When he gets a judgment and the court sits on the application, then he may make a formal application for recusal, giving reasons which we will respond to. Not at this stage when he is applying for a judgment. How do you apply for adjournment? How does he know that your lady will be hearing the application?
The circumstances, without assuming anything, the prosecution should give us an indication when they will avail the committal bundles so as to enable the court to schedule the other steps in the case.
Right, let me continue with my hard copies here. I have by technical challenges with Montague this morning. Authorities now say the violence in Olapo Simoru was well planned and funded as 9 people were arrested in connection with the renewed clashes there. Police are now looking for the masterminds of the chaos, said to be influential people keen to stop the second phase of the Mao evictions.
We have sufficient numbers on the ground, and that's why we've been able to restore normalcy. And we want to believe that going forward, we're not going to have similar issues arising in this area.
Sisi si wajinga sana, eti mtu atuambie wale watu ambao wanatembea hapa na boda na pro boxes, we poisoned arrows, they have woken up from their houses and found the arrows in their kitchens and they're moving around with them. Sisi si wajinga sana. This thing is being supported by some people, and the law will face them regardless of their status in this society.
Justice has not been done to those people whose property have been destroyed and maybe whose loved ones have been killed. So we want to get people and hold them responsible for this kind of behaviors, because we want to put an end to this culture of impunity, where people would meet, plan these activities, cause havoc, and then like nothing happens.
Now, Joseph Irungu, a key suspect in the murder of Monica Kimani, will remain in police custody for 10 days to allow detectives to complete investigations. Senior Principal Magistrate Stella Tambo ordered that he be detained at the Muthaiga police station and get medical attention as needed. In a ruling last evening, Tambo also asked the prosecution to facilitate family visits and medicine that the suspect will need. Irungu was arrested on Tuesday in Langata area, days after he recorded a statement with the police claiming he had been shot by unknown assailants by police, saying they have compelling evidence to tie him to Monica's murder.
We must balance the rights both of the victim as well as the accused person or the suspect.
I am satisfied that the reasons advanced by the prosecution for such detention are compelling. The suspect be remanded at Muthaiga police station during the period of detention mentioned on the 9th of October 2018.
Now, a luxurious 5-bedroom apartment in Lavington, Nairobi is a first item repossessed as reclaimed assets under the Asset and Recovery Agency. Businessman Mukuria Ngamau, who owned the house, bought it using stolen funds from the Youth Enterprise Development Fund. NTV's Mel Miendo has more on this.
5 million shillings cash prize is the current worth of the 5-bedroom duplex apartment in Lavington's Duchess Park. 57 million if paying through installments and 60.5 million if using a mortgage plan. 48.5 million is the amount businessman Mukuria Ngamau purchased apartment number D16 on an off-plan agreement from the developer Sigimo Enterprises.
What we're trying to do is get value from the money we have. Keeping it in an account where we'll get 3% doesn't help us at all. And I don't think it's a clever business decision. If you have 10 shillings in your pocket, you look for the best investment you can make until when you need that money to come through. Right now, as you all know, property is doing well, and that's why I invested in property.
This money was laundered from the Youth Development Enterprise Fund, where Mukuria's company, Quarandam Limited, was paid 180 million for ICT services which were not delivered. The apartment price forms a third of the total stolen loot. Of the 70 units in Duchess Park, the 5-bedroom apartments are 8, with each having a detached servants' quarter. These units are considered the attraction and selling point for the development 2 in each of the 4 blocks. The luxury apartment features a large terrace, a king-size master bedroom, a queen-size master bedroom, a private gym, a bar, 2 lounges, a private steam room and sauna. On 22nd September 2018, the Assets and Recovery Agency claimed the apartment as part of recovering the 180 million lost. The agency has been on Mukuriangamau's trail from 2016 in an effort to ensure the house is reclaimed and does not change hands. The Duchess Park apartments are still under construction and will be completed in December 2018. The 5-bedroom duplex apartment in Duchess Park is perhaps one of many luxury homes that have been purchased through crime proceeds. At the moment, the Asset and Recovery Agency is awaiting vesting orders, after which they will get the title of that specific house and then dispose it for the good use of the public. Naomi Endo reporting for NTV in Lavington, Nairobi.
Of course, also that will be a part of a discussion today, what the recovery agency is trying to do. A lot of monies as well. We know they've gone really down the tubes as far as corruption is concerned. But what is this particular agency doing in trying to recover these monies as well? Now, the government has ordered retailers across the country to sell maize flour at not more than 75 shillings for every 2-kilogram packet, amid growing fears that the price of a staple commodity could go up with the new taxes imposed on fuel currently.
Today, the cost of 90 kg bag of maize is averaging at 1,600, which is 50% of the 2017 price. It is disappointing, surprising, and unfortunate that this benefit is not being passed to the consumers. The position of the government is that a 2 kg unga packet should not retail at more than Kenya shillings 75.
We have agreed today, as millers, without coercion by the government. Though we have met with the minister, we have agreed that we shall, from today, sell our unga at wholesale prices for not more than 800 shillings per bill.
Now, a group of senators have come face to face with the harsh realities on the ground for farmers who toil to make a living, but for whom the lack of certain policies and cartels further up the value chain conspire to deny them a healthy living. This scenario played out as the Senate's ad hoc committee on the maize crisis, led by Professor Margaret Kimara and Moses Wetangula, held a consultative forum with farmers from the North Rift region.
Anaitwa cartel. Na mimi nataka leo msiondoke hapa mtuambie cartel. Wakulima hawa wanashuku nyinyi kwamba nyinyi ndio cartel wakubwa.
Tutashiba mianya yote. We want to stop this.
That we shall not continue producing food for this country if we are not going to be taken care of. Sisi tutahama tuende kwa commercial production, tufanye diversification, kila mtu ajilishe. Alafu tuone kama hii mahindi ya Mexico itaokoa watu wakiwa na njaa.
We cannot waste public resources to come and do a PR exercise here. We have come here because we know that there are issues affecting farmers and we want to find a lasting solution.
Murkomen, kale Trump anasaidia wakulima yao kwa kufunga na kuweka tariffs. Na sisi?
The Council of Governors have issued a sharp rebuke to the National Treasury's move to reduce the equitable share allocation to counties for the current financial year. In the move instigated by the Treasury through a memo to the CUG dated 17th September 2018, counties will have hundreds of millions of shillings slashed from their budgets in fresh austerity measures. On average, each county will lose 192.4 million shillings. CUG says that Treasury acted unilaterally on the matter, adding that the net effect will be the loss of service provision in critical sectors such as health. The CUG further says that there are myriad institutions in the national government still performing county duties that continue to receive allocations that ought to be channeled to counties. And Central Bank Governor Dr. Patrick Njoroge says the imposition of value-added tax on petroleum products will cause high inflation, but that the inflation will still be within the bank's prescribed limits. At a press briefing issued soon after the release of the Monetary Policy Committee's stance on the central bank rate, the governor also updated the public on the progress made in the investigation of banks that handled cash from the National Youth Service. Alex Mwangi has more on this.
Kenyans have a heavier burden to lift to see the economy through the current turbulent season, as the government seeks avenues to scale up revenue collection that have proved unpopular with many. Technocrats at the central bank have been busy crunching the numbers on the impact of the 8% imposition of VAT on petroleum products.
You have the first round effects, which is a direct transmission of the price in the CPI. And that first round effect, we calculated at about 0.4 percentage points. So you can say that now inflation last month was at 4%. So all else held constant, then you'd expect that the measured CPI would be something like 4.4.
That, however, will not be the only impact that the VAT is expected to bear down on the economy.
So we calculated the indirect effect. And this, once it seeps through the system, we expect it to be somewhere in the order of 0.6 percentage points.
According to the central bank, the combined impact of the direct and indirect effects of the increase in VAT, a cumulative 1 percentage point, will still keep inflation within the target range of between 2.5% and 7.5%. The governor gave an update on investigations into the National Youth Service scandal. 2 weeks ago, the CBK penalized Standard Chartered Bank, Equity Bank, KCB, Cooperative Bank and Diamond Trust Bank a total of 392.5 million shillings for their role in the loss of public funds.
The point is that they had until yesterday, Tuesday the 25th, all 5 banks were supposed to submit to us responses to the penalty notice. And the other thing they needed to show, to submit by then, is a time-bound action plan that is approved by their respective boards. Now, in terms of the next steps, I can confirm actually that as of yesterday, COB, all 5 banks had submitted what they had been required to do.
The central bank still remains optimistic that the economy will grow by 6.2% this year. Alex Mwangi, NTV.
Right, we have our guests here with us this morning that will take us through a raft of issues as far as the imposition of taxes is concerned and how the state of the economy will fare. Of course, we've heard from the Central Bank Governor Patrick Njoroge there with the sentiments about the high inflations, but that will be within the bank's prescribed limits. But we want to hear what does this really portend in other sectors of the economy as well. The Unga maize flour, that also we've been assured that will still go down at 75 shillings per 2 kgs. So that is good news also for most Kenyans, as that is our staple food as well. But allow me to introduce to you this morning Jason Braganza, who is a Deputy Executive Director at the Tax Justice Network Africa. Also, we have Kiriro Wangugi. He's a consultant, public affairs and policy. We have with us also Dr. Collins Odote, who is the lecturer at the University of Nairobi, also a columnist with the Business Daily. Also, we have with us as well Vincent Kimosop, who is the Executive Director at the Sovereign Insights and also expert on policy as well. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Right, let's just continue discussing this sort of raft of issues as I've mentioned here, especially with the sentiments from the Governor of Central Bank as far as high inflations are concerned with the petroleum products, coming into effect to the VAT. Let's just start with you, Jason. From your own point of view, do you think it is prescribed within the limits that the governor is really talking about, or it's also bound to spill over?
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to be a bit cautious. The central bank governor has given us, his confident speech about how he feels the inflation range is going to keep within the bank's requirements. But The spillover effects are not just within the certain basket of goods. What we're seeing is that the VAT application across a several range of goods and services that are being provided across the country, and the net effects that are going to start being felt also in terms of other services, other goods that are being provided. So I think the impact is going to be a lot wider than the central bank is actually claiming it, and we're definitely going to see a larger part of the population starting to feel the effects very soon when we talk about goods that are, that they've broadened the goods that are, implementing the VAT. So there are going to be some serious implications there, and I think that there is something we need to be very cautious about.
So is this sort of a conservative statement from him to try and allay fears, from the public? Because of course,
Absolutely.
they are. Okay.
Absolutely. As the governor of the central bank, he also needs to manage expectations within the economy. We've already seen from a few weeks ago, once the SBA arrangement from the IMF was withdrawn, the Kenya shilling did slide against some of the major currencies, against the dollar, the pound, the euro. So he's also trying to manage the expectations of investors, of businesses, also of the population, both within the country but externally. So certainly he has given a very cautious approach, but we are definitely going to see some wider, deeper impacts across the country. Yeah.
And of course, we want to also look at some of the levies that people don't really understand so far. One of the issues is like, the levy on the unadulterated fuel, that fuel levy, that people don't really know what is the rhyme and reason of having this particular fuel levy. And this really, go way over so many people's heads in terms of wrapping their minds around it. Why do we have it so far? And why should we Kenyans be paying for that? That should not be, our business actually paying for the unadulterated fuel. Could we just get an understanding on this? What is it, first of all? And it really came from the left side. This was not in the finance bill as it was. It was something that was sneaked in.
Yeah, I think it's one way of trying to also curb the illegal trade and illicit trade on unadulterated fuel. It's one way of trying to capture that within the tax system and discourage that sort of behavior. When we look at it from that.
But why should it be the business of the common mwananchi? We have regulatory bodies here in the country.
Yeah.
We have the counterfeit agency as well. I mean, we have Kenya Bureau of Standards. I don't know. We have the Energy Regulatory Commission as well. Why should we be actually saddled with this responsibility?
Well, you see, when it makes its way into the market, it has the potential to undermine what legal and the correct sort of fuels that are being provided in the stations. So one way of levying taxes on unadulterated fuel is to then discourage people from consuming that fuel, because what will end up happening is the price of that fuel will go up. So the idea is to discourage consumers and move them back into using the correct channels and the legal ways of fuel that's being produced and supplied.
Right, Vincent, let's hear from Collins Odote on this first of all, because one, at least for milk, maybe if I have my lactometer, I can actually be able to dip it in my milk. I will know this is water and this is the content of milk that we have in that particular barrel. But for fuel, for a common mwananchi, what should we buy then to really know this is adulterated fuel or not? Because I think this is, how do I even tell, first of all, that this is pure fuel?
Thanks, Debarl. Yes, when I say the reason for putting the tax is essentially to discourage people, but I don't think that is the only reason. Actually, I suspect the main reason is to raise revenue.
It's to raise revenue.
We must be honest. That's actually the main reason. This other one is the excuse.
But what was the percentage? Because if you actually slap it on the 16 or the 8, then that will really come to 10.
Because to even tell people, forget even that, to tell people that we know we want to increase the price of kerosene to be equal to or higher than diesel, so that it is not used to adulterate diesel. I think it's essentially it's a lie, because surely it can't be that the way we are able to stop people from committing illegal activities is by increasing tax. We have bodies, as you've rightly said, whose responsibility it is to ensure that that does not happen, and they haven't done their work. If I checked, I think I've only seen one person in the whole of this year being taken to court for selling adulterated food. One. That's the one that I have heard about. So we have tools as government, but you can't tell us that the only tool you want to impose is the one of taxes. The second thing, Debarl, going back to the first question you asked, if you listen to the central bank governor, he said a statement that lawyers like saying, which is all factors remaining constant.
Satiras Baribas.
Economist.
Satiras Baribas or something like that.
There will, all factors will not remain constant. So essentially the 1% is the minimum you can expect. Definitely the inflation rate will be much higher than 1%. And I think if you've heard even government speaking, the DP this week was saying, you know, if people increase much more than what the price of VAT, then those people are criminals. The reality is that the increases in the other goods will not be directly proportional to the amount of VAT increase. It isn't that if you increase by 8%, everybody will increase by 8%. They won't. The businesses will find excuses for making more money and passing even more cost to consumers. So we'll definitely have much more greater impact than the 8% VAT that's been increased, unfortunately.
Let's hear from Kiniro. Good morning.
I want to reiterate that what the governor has said, what the logic behind the increase in the price of kerosene is fundamentally a lie. You've heard of the concept that you drink poison so that I die, but you are the one drinking it. We have asked the common mwananchi to take the poison of higher kerosene in their lives so that the dealers die. There is no logic. The dealers will not die. Number two, the kerosene, something that people might not know, kerosene is in fact jet fuel. They're one and the same. It's the same chemical product. So if there is an attempt to raise kerosene, they should have mentioned their relationship with jet fuel, because you will still have to ask for a price for kerosene that correlates. If there is any logic in correlation between the price of one and adulteration, then it is not the petrol dealer who sells diesel. It is the fuel that goes into aviation. They are the same product. That's where the challenge is. But in this atmosphere, because of the lead up to our revising our budget, the Treasury was under great pressure to raise money from everything. There was even an issue that had been resolved by the committee about confectionery and chocolate. And there is very little money they raise, but in the confusion that happened at Parliament,
yes,
even that one was not discussed. And the committee had spent, the Finance and Planning Committee had spent a lot of time and listened to resource people, and they had therefore recommended that we drop that. It's going to knock one or two manufacturing companies, yes, but nobody was listening. But that's another story. What happened at Parliament, that's another story that informs the state of the nation. Yeah, we are in a precarious position because we do not even behave reasonably.
We do not behave reasonably in a very precarious situation. I don't know what will be.
I think I will just add to what Jason has pointed out, yes, about traditionally when an economy is in such a situation, what you've seen in the past is there is need for alternative voices. If you look at the dividend that is given to the political voice in this country, it's very high. But in this situation, when you talk about economic issues, I naturally see the sense why the governor of the central bank spoke, and it's meant to give a calming effect into the economy, to explain to people this is our projection. If you remember, I think the former Fed chair Bernanke used to, when the US was going through a tumultuous economic situation, consistently, almost on a monthly basis, would speak to the economy, this is what we are doing. And that had a major impact in terms of confidence, boosting confidence of investors, appreciating that beyond the political, an objective, at that time possibly somebody whose word, yes, was actually, you could see it directly on its implication on the strength of the US economy. So I would see why the central bank governor has spoken. And actually, if you look at his statement, is that is conservative. It is it shall be okay from our estimation, the information that we have, holding all factors constant. Now, I think broadly the only issue I would add is that what needs to be brought to the picture is the impact of certain taxes. For example, the increase in consumption taxes, the inequalities that comes with it.
Yes.
Because when you look at a tax like VAT, as much as you're talking about 8%, when you're looking at like the one on petroleum,
yes,
the incidence and its implications to the different populations constituencies are actually different. We also look at how we calculate inflation is on a certain basket of goods. So the challenge we have is that if we do not look at it from the holistic picture, the 0.4% projection that might not be the complete narrative. So I think it is important for us to contextualize the message and the statement from the central bank governor and appreciate that, hey, in the implementation of taxes like VAT, the impact on the different population constituents, abilities and income levels will be different. And I think that is important because just look at even our tax base, look at the resources we've been able to mobilize, and look at the flexibilities and the KRA performance over time. So I think it is important that we appreciate that, hey, as these taxes are going to be implemented, the impact on different population constituencies will be different, and that is not part of the complete narrative that has been given. But whereas it is important because the central bank has a responsibility on managing inflation, as in the money market, so it was important for that narrative. Now, what is required then the implications of the recent tax changes?
All right. Let's get back to you, Jason. Of course, also looking at the front page of a Business Daily, that taxes, it's pushing up bank charges, and many people have received also notices from the banks to this effect that come next Tuesday, as is put here, Kenyans are also Kenyan banks are racing to implement the doubling of excess taxes on fees they levy on transactions. And it says that following the signing into law of the Finance Bill 2018, a move that is expected to significantly increase the cost of banking from 10 to 20. Don't you think that is a significant a percentage to just increase it in one fell swoop?
Absolutely, and I think it's building on what Collins and Vincent have said. It's the government grappling at straws to raise revenue and trying to find every single tax it can put onto the citizen in order to finance its development agenda, if there is a development agenda that to be financed. But the impact is, again, it's one of those things where we didn't hear in the clip from the central bank governor, but what that means for the financial inclusion, financial services, and the ability to borrow money for investment purposes, in the country. These sorts of taxes charges tend to make people shy away from putting their money into banks and using their services. Secondly, the charges also seem to be simultaneous charges being imposed on mobile phone financial services.
Yes.
So you can see that it's cutting across, and unfortunately, some of these measures are reversing the positive things the government had been pursuing over the past 10 years in terms of increasing financial inclusion, making sure where citizens did not have access to banks or financial services, they could actually have these services on their mobile phones or a lot more easily. So there is a significant negative impact that's likely to happen here. Of course, there are details on which transactions are being levied. I think there's a threshold. I don't think it's all transactions across the bank.
All transactions.
All transactions. Because I know there are ATM charges that are being brought back or have also been increased. So there is a growing concern here that even when you then go back to the statement about what the real inflation for a citizen is going to be, you may have the CPI, but when you take these other things that are not constant.
Yes.
That he said this is the real cost of living is actually going to go up for very many people.
For many people,
and it's across the board. One thing we're going to realize here is that some of these things are not just targeting the sort of a certain income levels. It's across the entire board. However, the impact, as Vincent had mentioned, is going to be felt a lot more in the lower income thresholds in our country, and so we need to be very worried about the trend that this government has taken with regard to the use of taxation as the instrument, because it's extremely regressive in its approach. It's extremely punitive, especially for certain income groups in this country, and particularly on a very strained taxed population. We have a very narrow, very small base of people who are taxed in this country, vis-a-vis, if you compare it to other countries, and so we are going to certainly be an overtaxed population, and very soon you may start seeing individuals trying to weasel their ways out of paying these taxes. Because this sort of approach by the government is actually creating an environment for people to try and not pay, which goes against the tenets of what taxation is all about. Yeah.
Thank you. And of course, we will look at that, the revenue collection in this country, the dismal performance from KRA, because we know they're having a shortfall of over 600 billion shillings, right? Just 40% of what they're actually, they've collected only 40% from the whole 100% that they're actually supposed to be collecting. And I think that's a very dismal amount. We'll try and see what ways can they maybe broaden their tax base and have a robust revenue collection as well. I think Kirilo also you're strength.
Yeah, there is a fundamental flaw in the thinking that was introduced 2 months after we had passed the previous budget. If you want higher revenue from taxation,
yes,
you lower the rate of taxation. It's proven the world over. You do not go, remember we had 10% on money transfers, mobile money transfers.
Yes.
And then they raised it to 12%. Yeah, that's what the parliament had passed. And then you know what happened. When he came back with the president's memo, it had gone to 20%.
Yes.
Now, this is ridiculous. You are going in the wrong direction. It's inflationary, and you are pressing the common man in the street. Why do you do that? If you want people to cooperate with you, is that the point you've made? If you lower the tax levels, you attract more. People do not stress about it. They don't try and cut corners. They pay the little that you have asked them to pay. Then you demonstrate where the money is going. In this circumstance we are in, I would like to see actual results. We have the atmosphere. Some assets are being recovered. Some people are in court. I think this is the thrust. This is the direction. If you start repossessing some of the assets bought by money that was stolen, and we hear it's about 1/3, the issue of raising taxes would not arise. So this is what we ought to be focused on, so that there is the money that we do raise from our taxes is protected, and B, goes to a tangible place that we see. There is a fundamental flaw. And let me mention this. The people who are managing money issues, if you examine, if you do an analysis of their backgrounds, too many of them are from IMF. I don't know whether you've seen that. Yes. So that their thinking and thought process and their associations and their mindset is informed by an institution that is again evidence-based. They just rape small countries, small economies. They have no idea how we should run our economy, none whatsoever. And yet they have too much influence on our thinking of where we should go. That's another fundamental flaw. And I would like those who appoint people to start thinking, where is the problem? I want to contend the problem is the mindset of those who run our economy. There is too much history with IMF. We should do something about it.
Too much history with the IMF, but don't we see also the barrage of these particular officers or officials that we have in the government right now? Most of them are drawn from the IMF and the Bretton Woods institutions.
Yeah, that's my point.
So that's the mentality, right? Yes. From also the cabinet secretary himself. Yeah. We can go back to the PS. You have these batteries of officials from the Bretton Woods institutions. So
absolutely.
Yes.
And that is a fundamental problem we have. And we have to address it. There is something that the governor has said, keeps saying. And a lot of people...
And the governor himself as well.
Yeah, even the governor. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Governor, CS, PS, the whole gang. There is something that they keep saying about the cap on interest. That if you cap interest, you cut out the small scale industries. I have never understood that logic. If the small traders are at a higher risk than Kenya breweries, that is the argument. What happened to equity? Because from where I sit, equity stood on the other side. They said, by the way, these people are creditworthy. The Mama Mboga, who needs a capital of 10,000 only, she will not run away with your money. And voila! The performance of equity has demonstrated exactly that the small scale and low end of the market is also abundant with trust and commitment. What are we saying about that the banks will not lend to the small scale?
Thank you.
It's a mistake.
Right. Let's hear from Collins before we take a short break. Collins.
Debarl, you know the law on interest rates is slowly being repealed.
Yes.
If you've seen your email from the bank tells you that the minimum deposit rates has been removed.
Yes.
So it's not just the increase in excess duty. Is the
so this is just gimmickry to go back to where they were.
Exactly.
Right. Cutting around, you know, or cutting around
the things that people want, they don't want, and they get away with it. And it takes me to the second issue, the 8% VAT on fuel. You know, initially it was 16%. When parliamentarians refused 16% and took it to 0, the president, in having it to 8%, increased taxes and all manner of things. The one we're discussing about money transfers wasn't the first one. It was only for deposits over 500,000. Now it's been brought to everything. The housing development levy has been reduced. So in terms of refusing, they gave you reduced it to 8% and gave you many other things. And I think that's challenging. The second thing, Debarl, is as long as we continue only focusing on increasing interest, on increasing taxes, we'll not solve the problem. In fact, I can tell you, the 40% that KRA has collected might be what they collect the whole year. Until the end for the year, they'll struggle to reach 60% because we are an overtaxed population. And the more taxes we are imposing, the less productive we are becoming. And the less productive we are becoming, the less amounts of money is available to tax, but also the more penchant it is for people to evade paying tax. So adding those two things, we're essentially in a hole. I think there are several things we'll have to do. And one of them that we must focus on clearly, we need to stop doing big four quickly. We can't afford to fund all the four of them. We must pick one and leave the rest of the thing. In fact, yesterday there was a joke on social media about, actually not a joke, the president had tweeted that he has met Bill and Melinda Gates. And the response from a citizen was, please, don't borrow more money from them. That just tells you the thinking of citizens, and it's the sooner we start paying. So when we see him signing a deal with the UN to build 100,000 houses, our first instinct is not that, oh, the UN is helping us. Our first instinct is that's more tax. And that's, I think, is the challenge that we need to address.
Right. Could we take a short break before we circle back with you, Vincent? Right. We want just to take a short break right now. When we circle back, of course, we continue with the conversation. And also, you can chime in, hit us on Twitter. AM Live NTV is the Twitter handle. AM Live NTV, our profile name on Facebook. You can give us a thumbs up there. And also 20686, our SMS portal. We have economist Joe saying Kenya is the most taxed country after South Africa and Swaziland. Kenya is equally the third most corrupt country in Africa. A third of Kenya's budget each year is lost to corruption. Which reason do I have to pay high taxes? Right? Which reason do I have to pay high taxes if all this is really happening in this country? Also, we'll just give you a list. I think someone sent me a list of how these scandals are. If you add them up, it is almost totaling to $1 trillion shilling. That will actually go into the budget. We are really talking about the 3 trillion shilling budget. And we can see all these scandals, and he's not really captured all the scandals with their figures as well. Right? That is a bright Kenyan who has actually captured all this. That on the other side of the break. Don't go away.
This is NT.
Right, welcome back. You're watching In the Market here on AM Live, where we're discussing a raft of issues as far as the state of economy is concerned after the, of course, imposition of VAT taxes as well. So, has inflation, or is it promising to also skyrocket the inflation in the country? The governor of the central bank has promised that this will be within the prescribed limit as well, as far as his statement is concerned. But I just want also to show you what also the EACC is doing. I'll walk over momentarily to my touchscreen just to show you that editorial cartoon that Victor has done for us today. And the EACC has embarked on the use of Bible study to boost the Commission's fight against corruption. The Commission, chaired by retired Anglican Archbishop Eliud Bukala, launched the Bible study guide together with the interreligious sector yesterday. The study guide, titled Integrity, a Weapon Against Corruption, will be put to use by groups and individuals dealing with corruption matter. The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission said on Twitter, the Bible study guide is intended to help Kenyans interact with the Bible and discover God's position on corruption and his direction on living a corruption-free life. The Commission said every member of the society has an opportunity to contribute to the success of the war against corruption. EACC said Kenya is losing a third of its state budget, the equivalent of about 600 billion shillings, to corruption every year. Kenya has a history of multi-million-dollar scandals that have failed to result in high-profile convictions. And this is the editorial cartoon that we have for you as well, drawn by Victor. So we're digging our heads in the Bible. Will this be the prime solution?
No.
That will not be the prime solution, right?
Let me say something.
No, I think maybe we can just hold this particular conversation because I think we were going sequentially. We'll come now to corruption and this now moved by the EACC as well, so that we don't lose track of where we were. When we were circling back, we promised to continue with Vincent Kimosop. I hope you've not really lost your track of thoughts. We still want to see on the tax regime, the revenue collection, also the blowback of this particular VAT levy as well. How is it affecting the country?
I think we on this I would want to speak in the context of efforts towards enhancing domestic revenue mobilization efforts in the country. I would want to look at on the 1st of August, the Departmental Committee of Planning and Finance invited people to make submissions, and actually I was just before Kiriro in their submissions, and I remember one of the positions actually pointed out, using evidence, is how, for example, there are other opportunities that the finance bill missed. And evidence shows, for example, the missed opportunities, taxation of cigarette products. I was after us, the industry made representations, and when you even look at the industry itself, it recommends to Parliament that government is losing revenue because you're not taxing products that are normally called sin products. Let's just give a specific example that from evidence. 1992, the price, for example, of tobacco products is gone down on real price because of inflation, and we explained to Parliament that if you tax such products, they have two advantages. They raise revenue and they help you address public health concerns. So you have a win-win situations where you achieve public health objectives, but more importantly also achieve revenue. KRA shows even in their projections that when there were changes in the tax structure together with increase inflation adjusted, their revenue went up on excise. So we also pointed out that things like confectionaries, that when we are dealing with an emerging issue like non-communicable diseases, how do we encourage and promote the use of tax policies to achieve public health objectives? Look at the budgetary allocation that has increased in the ministries of health just because of non-communicable diseases, things like exercise, things like how do we promote an active culture that ensures that we have an active population that then are healthy, because we are seeing a tangent that is growing on the rise of NCDs. We also pointed out incentives that to the SME, that is small and medium term enterprises, because as Kiriro pointed out clearly, that the equity model shows that if you incentivize this sector, make tax payment, collection, and even reporting easy for them, they actually respond to them, provide support towards certain sectors so that we broaden the tax base. I think also the other thing is that the efforts that are geared towards the accountability of the taxes that we are collecting should be supported. So I am concerned that whereas we are complaining about the taxes that have been levied, other opportunities have also been left that would have actually helped reduce the burden.
Right.
And I think this calls, we were having a conversation somewhere with Jason, and I pointed out that this actually could be a very good opportunity, because for the first time Kenyans are united in discussing an issue which is taxation. So this could actually be a good time when we now rethink about what is our philosophy in taxation. How do we support our institutions, both for the...
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Because you've raised the issue of confectionaries, and I think also that was really captured by Treasury at 20%, and he was alluding to the fact that yes, we have this non-communicable diseases as well, which is skyrocketing, and the World Health Organization also is proposing that yes, we should actually slap some taxes on this to try and ameliorate the situation currently in the world. And of course, he gave the reason that will be one of them. So I think that also was captured.
But
then,
it was not.
It was not.
Eventually, we did not see it's passed and approved. So the concern that we have is that we have this body of evidence and information that shows that we can actually increase our taxes and still achieve other benefits as a result of that. And my concern then is we did not see this through. So I think I would appreciate if this discussion and this context, that we do not just burn out of the emotions that we are concerned, we are not unhappy about this, but we sit back and reflect, how do we get it right moving forward?
Thank you.
So that then what Kiriro was saying, bringing the people on board in terms of tax payments.
I want to put a small correction.
We'll come to you. Let's just hear from Jason. Jason, first of all, he talks about the sin tax, and I think this was not really actually captured this time because over the years we've seen, yes, the government has been particularly intent, especially on the sin tax, and maybe they felt it was unfair again with the sin tax on this alcohol beverages. The price is soaring up every year, every taxation period. It has to be spiked a bit, but in light of that, the tobacco bill, I don't know where it is at, is it an act right now, and what then difference did it make when we came up with the tobacco bill? I know some of the organization was slapping this and saying this will be unfair, it will be unfair competition. It's an act right now.
Yes, it's an act.
It's an act. What discernible difference has it made so far with the tobacco bills? Because I think you're fronting for this tobacco bill so that at least the issue also of taxation will be addressed within the bill as it is. Maybe we can hear from Jason.
Yeah, I mean, let's also put it into context, as Vincent has said. I mean, the idea here on tax revenue collection by the government it's how you identify and target. The sin taxes through the use of excise is also intended to have positive externalities in the future. So the approach taken by the government to impose taxes over several number of years on tobacco products is a good one, right? Not because it's going to harm the industry, but because it has positive health outcomes in the future, right? And the position and the direction that the government has been taking in consistently applying and increasing the excise taxes on the industry and on the product is the correct one. And we as TGNA, we support that sort of direction that the government has been taking. We would actually, I think Vincent is probably better placed because he's been in this space for a very long time.
Yes.
But we actually would encourage the government to actually come out more stronger on the industry, because what we are seeing, and if I can glean into what Vincent was describing before, is that there is a level of interference.
Yes.
By the industry with the policymakers, with the legislators in trying to regress some of the very positive movements that the government has made in taxing the sector. Similarly with the sugar and confectionery, for one, I mean, from a health outcome, I think it's a good idea. But I would love to have understood, in our context as Kenya, what exactly is our consumption of sugar and confectionery that meted such a huge percentage of taxation being levied. Again, I also come back to think about, now we're in with the sugar crisis or scandals that we're facing. There are people lining up to import sugar into this country. Are they going to apply for exemptions to import the sugar into this country? Therefore, that, but still impose the 20% price hike when they're selling it.
This is the industrial sugar.
Yeah. So it'd be interesting to know what's going to happen in that sense. So from health outcome point of view, I think there's a case to be made for why these taxes are levied, for the greater good in future. But it's for the confectionery and sugar, it'd be very interesting to know what informed the basis for increasing that beyond just the health outcomes, given our consumption patterns.
Or was it a right just to slap also taxes on it? Yes, the World Health is saying because we have the NDC, then we actually increase it by 20%. So that will be another good reason as well. But we can see the things that, yes, let's hear from Kirero before I move on. Kirero.
We have to be factual.
Yes.
And I want to say two things. One, I made a presentation to the finance and planning. I was just ahead of Vincent.
I was ahead of me.
Yeah, you are ahead. Yeah.
You are together.
So and I was arguing against the imposition based on science.
The imposition on confectionaries, or
yes, on confectionery.
Yes.
Because there is a little bit of confusion when you start saying that sugar is also a sin. You are lost scientifically. Let me disclose that my original training is in
under the broad,
there are some positions the World Health Organization takes that are untenable.
But we need to make it clear.
Yeah.
Did they see that confectionery is under sin tax?
No.
Oh, wait,
no, I argued and they agreed with me and removed the tax. It was reimposed after the confusion in Parliament.
Oh, really?
Yes. Let me tell you about, I wanted to tell you my authority on this matter.
Yes.
I'm trained biochemist. Yeah?
Yes.
The evil in the piece is not sucrose. Sucrose is one molecule glucose and one molecule fructose. And that is the natural sugar that without it we wouldn't live. All living organisms would not survive. We're clear?
Yes.
Somewhere in the early 70s, a scientist created what we call high fructose corn syrup. Dead cheap, very sweet, and that is the one that has been replaced in industry for anything they want to taste sweet. It's a chronic poison. The metabolism of fructose without the glucose is chronic. Chronic, I mean it slowly kills you and is the cause of obesity. So the fundamental science that is now being understood is that do not hate at sucrose, but please ban and eliminate high fructose corn syrup. It's the killer. I don't know whether together.
Yes.
The other thing that is called sin product is alcohol. Unfortunately, when you eat ugali or rice or any carbohydrate, in order to acquire energy from that carbohydrate, the body must convert it at some point, this is deep science, into alcohol. So without...
so all of us are alcoholics.
No, you go through the metabolic process. Yeah. At one point becomes alcohol. That is in fact why if you go home and you're tired and you have a shot of whiskey, lift you up immediately. Alcohol is an integral part of the metabolic process that makes us live. Okay. So be careful when you start saying broadly, uninformed, that alcohol is a sin product. It isn't. Without it, you are dead.
Okay, but
I will say finally,
for the benefit of our discussion, those are details. Yeah,
But I wanted to caution because it's easy for an economist, for a lawyer, an economist to just hear from World Health Organization that these are sins. If we tax them, we reduce the sin that is inherent in them. It isn't. Even on tobacco, the best strategy is to give information about some of the things that will happen to you guy, because ultimately you've got to get the human being to make a decision. If you show people the effect of tobacco after 20 years of smoking, there is something called OCPD that I'm not going into the detail now, but they would not dare smoke.
Thank you.
Information is a better strategy than imposition.
Right, thank you, thank you. All right, good. I think you've given us a broad spectrum of that very rich stream of information as
and
well.
that is what I argued there. And there's a point he has made which is very, very important. In our context,
yes,
where is confectionery? 56% of our people live below $1 a day. Actually, if we could afford it, we should buy them sugar. I don't know whether you understand. There are developed countries' problems that do not affect us, at least not yet. Because we have a sugar deficit, we have an energy deficit for the majority of our people. And then you think that you are helping them when you impose taxes on them. You are not helping.
But yeah, we went away because we had the issue of I think Dr. Collins Odote was talking about lies. Could this be other, lies that are actually being projected by the government?
There are some genuine. It's not a lie. This particular one.
No. Yeah, it is true on that. But as you've mentioned, we are not in that state as a country as yet to actually slap this particular tax.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it might be a very good concept from the World Health Organization.
Yes.
But in our context, it's not really applicable right now.
No.
I don't know what Dr. Collins Odote you have to say on this before we move on also to what is on the other sidebar on the front page of a Business Daily. Just to wrap it up a bit on the taxes. I don't want us to dwell so much deeply, but we want to look at the details because we're seeing the blowbacks of the taxation and what it does.
Two quick things. I thought that Kiriri was about to say that since we need information, he's advocating for people to be alcoholics. And I was getting that is what I was skirmish a bit this morning, yes. But I think there's something else that we've also not discussed that you raised at the start of the Debarl, and that's about maize.
Yes.
When the article you are talking about was coming, the Minister for Agriculture also told us that the price of unga will come back to 75 shillings from 150. On the face of it, looks very, very good. But deep, I think is also a very worrying thing. It's worrying because if you go to our bread baskets in the Rift, and something that I think the senators were speaking about yesterday, you will know that there is a maize crisis that's taking place. The maize crisis that is taking place is that the prices of maize is actually becoming unproductive for farmers. I have seen friends who come from that region advocating publicly on social media for their people to stop growing maize because it will drive them into poverty. So while we celebrate the reduction in prices, I think when prices get reduced by 50%, you must not just celebrate from a consumer's perspective, you must ask yourself, so what does it mean in terms of production? Because if we then drive our people away from production too, we'll do what we've done to sugar. The sugar industry in Western Kenya has essentially impoverished people. And if we impoverish our farmers who are also relying on maize as their means of livelihood without addressing the fundamentals, then we would just be going on. And I think for me, that's my response to Kirilo's statement about
But even drilling deeper on that particular issue, is it because there was a sort of a maize glut in the country? Right, because we had a lot of importation and farmers still were actually growing maize in this country, and it had yielded so much good harvest, but there was nowhere to sell.
And that's what we must address.
This is what we must address. So if also the cabinet secretary is coming to the fore and telling us, yes, we've actually, or we are reducing it to 75 or retaining it at this particular price, they're not telling us that they're doing a good thing in the first place, because we know there was glut in the country. And this is actually a government mistake in the first place with the importation of maize.
And it can't be that in a year, because a year ago, just before elections, we had to import maize.
Yes.
Because there was no maize. It can't be that a year later, we now have too much, that the prices must go by 50%.
Must go down. You see, that imbalance is not really adding up.
That's not planning. That's essentially taking us for the lies that you sell and sell convenient, because you conveniently now talk to the emotions of people and say, oh, the prices of flour has gone down by 50%. So we're not doing too badly. We are doing badly.
We're doing badly.
By the way, we are doing badly at a very fundamental point. Maize is a difficult crop, and maize, from a nutritional point of view, we can do it by law. When you say flour, and you can do the policy manipulation, you must not do it only with maize. You must work out what else needs to be put in that maize flour, like sorghum, etc., in order to raise the two things. One, raise the nutrient value of that flour. Two, reduce the acreage necessary for maize and increase the acreage for sorghum and other more resilient crops with higher nutrition. That can be done. We haven't thought it through. Maize is a bad crop. So if you reduce the acreage of maize, in the long run, you increase the nutrient value of the replacement, and you use other arid and semi-arid areas for food production.
Fantastic,
I wanted to raise something, Debarl, if you'd allow me, is on the issue of consistency in policy. As far as the issue of maize production, importation and consumption is concerned. I remember when we had a maize shortage, the subsidy went to the millers, and that is when the price went down to 90. I think if, as a public policy expert, the subsidy, in my view, should have gone to the farmers, so that then we increase production. And then when you do that, knowing very well that production is going to go up, then you then prepare the framework in terms of the storage, the markets, so that the entire value chain is supported. Otherwise, what happens, we will have distortion. When you have a distorted policy, what happens? It impacts the entire value chain, and that's why we are back to that conversation in this duration. So I think this is the best time to then, even the current conversation of having a floor of the price of unga is good on the part of consumers, but let it be done in the context of the broader policy consistency and coherence, so that we are not here 2 years again talking about consumption, talking about glut.
Vincent, that was not a policy.
Thank you.
It was just before the elections. That was a major reaction about.
Thank you. Let's hear from Jason on this as well before we move on.
Yeah, you know, I'm torn because I agree with what Kiro is saying, but you know, Vincent and I also work very closely together, but I have to kind of disagree with what he's saying, because what we're seeing here is not even confusion in public policy, but a complete disruption and deliberate manipulation. The issue of maize shortages and then maize gluts and then having to import is a story we have been seeing for as long as I can remember. And I'm not that old, but for as long as I can remember. And what I do find very dishonest with the government approach to this is that within days or weeks of there being mentioned of a shortage of maize, there are already things at the port ready to come into the country, and all of a sudden, and this speaks also to the tax revenue mobilization, because the things that then come in, like maize or sugar, don't pay taxes. Under the East African Community Customs Union, we apply for a level, something called an emergency exemption, which you can get because of shortages. We have to import that stuff in. The KRA does not receive any revenue from that. They're imported not only by government but by private individuals, who then profit from selling the maize at very high prices. The second thing about warehousing, about diversification of crops for then making the flour, has been on the agenda since, at least I can remember, since 2003 during the economic recovery program of the form of administration. So there seems to be some dishonesty in how the government manipulates not only the citizenry but also the entire agricultural market in order to suit its own individual needs and those cartels that exist. So I don't think it's a public policy issue. I actually think it's a deliberate manipulation by government to try and skew towards certain individuals, and as a result, the price fluctuations, it affects farmers. It affects how farmers can plan, because they don't know what prices are going to be, they will get to the market. And at this point, we're not even sure whether government is guaranteeing prices for farmers when they grow. You know, so also that crop diversification, I think, is something that we need to think about. You know, and what Kiru is saying here,
which actually, if you think about it, beats the logic behind the taxation on confectionaries. That if we are lowering the price of maize flour right now, and we're talking about the nutritive value of this maize flour in the first place, and we're trying to beat obesity in this country, and this is not a nutritive maize flour that we're talking about. This actually some of the maize flour that has gone through the process of how do you call it, the posho meal and all, and they've extracted all this nutritive value, right? Because if you take the organic maize flour that we had from Mashambani, you just take a small portion of it, it's so organic, but the whole packet that we'll buy from a supermarket, you can actually take a big chunk of it and you're never satisfied, or your stomach is not full. But how do we also, can we talk about this, adding these nutritive values, and if you're talking about containing a nation that you don't want it to be obese, and the prices or maybe medical health care also is skyrocketing, issues of diabetes, right? If we are giving the staple food to the Kenyan populace, yet we're fighting issue of diabetes right now because of high not fructose or sucrose,
high fructose corn syrup.
Yes,
that's
corn syrup.
Corn syrup. It's extracted from corn. And that's what links it to diabetes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Right. That is resolved in terms of science. It hasn't come to the fore in informing policy yet.
So, because if you go to buy a good organic maize flour, it's expensive than the 75 shillings that we're really talking about, because they know also the value of the nutritive value that is actually in this particular maize flour. Anyway.
Let's go to Nebukata.
No, Jet. I want us to we're going to talk. You're really waiting for that. But no, I want us to actually focus on the low-income households to miss out on growth, because this is another time that if you may pick up on the Business Daily, a sidebar story there, and they're saying millions of low-income households will not feel the impact of expected 6.2% economic growth this year, the Central Bank of Kenya said, citing disproportionate growth arising from the capping of interest rates. Right?
Yeah.
The interest rates and also the growth of the economy at 6.2%. You are the experts. When we look at the micro and the macro of it, because another time we say the economy has grown, but people are asking, how is this economy, how has it expanded, yet we cannot see the exceeding beneficial value of this growth? There is no employment. So on what aspect has it grown? From the micro or from the micro? I don't know. You're the experts, you can tell us. Let's begin with Jason. We'll come to you. Jason, we'll come to you, Kiriro. Jason?
I want to build on a point that Kiro made before we went on the break.
Yes.
About how the indoctrination of the central bank governor and the national treasury.
I didn't say it.
That is my word. I'm thinking of what you said. The philosophy behind this, and us just focusing on GDP figures. I mean, there is a whole school of thought out there of economists and development experts who would, not necessarily focus on just GDP, the GDP figures, because it's not doesn't paint a true picture of what is actually happening in the economy, and particularly because, like we've been talking about the impact of taxes at different levels in the economy. It's the same thing with the growth figures. I think the reason why I'm bringing Kiri's point here about what I call the invisible hand of IMF in this figure here, in this context, is the fact that the central bank governor is using the interest rate capping as the excuse.
Yes,
is typical of the Bretton Woods institution to then say liberalize, open up the economy, everyone will benefit, and it's completely false.
Thank you.
Right? It is absolutely the reason. The reason low-income households are not feeling the benefit of the growth is that they are excluded generally from participation, but also the growth has been unequal. right? It's very biased to certain sectors. We are not diversifying our economic and productive base. We are relying on our traditional coffee, tea,
yes,
increasingly horticulture and financial services. But look at what is the contribution of light industry, manufacturing, the actual sectors that create jobs in this country, or that can create jobs in this country, are not being exploited to their full potential. That means that Kenyans are not being employed, they don't have incomes.
Yes.
And the result you're seeing is a very unbalanced type of growth that we're experiencing. And so for the government to actually put this on the interest rate capping, I think is a little bit not fully truthful. But also you can see the role of the industry, the banking industry in some of these statements, because I know that I have heard somewhere that the industry has told or explained to the central bank that if these interest rate caps are removed, they can unlock a huge amount of financial resources to small and medium enterprise. So I think there's a little bit of cloak and daggers going on here with using the interest rate capping as an excuse to justify exclusion or lack of benefits of the growth. But it is true, there is an unbalanced growth trajectory that we are following as a country.
Okay.
Yeah.
Collins, we'll come to Mr. Kidero. Okay.
Yeah.
Collins,
I think very quick things. The interest rates law has actually led to disproportionate growth. But it's led to disproportionate growth not because of capping, but because of the attitude of the governor and the attitude of the banks.
Yeah.
The governor and the bank took the position from the start that this was bad law, it was not supposed to be implemented, and they have done everything to frustrate it. The cap was supposed to help ensure that the people of low income groups are able to access credit. They just refuse to give it to them by saying you are uncreditworthy, you are risky, they don't give it to you. And as a consequence, now people at the lower end are suffering. What is surprising, I was having a conversation with several banker friends of mine. The first year of this law, banks actually had reduced profits. This year, they've actually had increased profits, including, if you look, a bank that has been focusing on small-scale people. We know that bank, the bank that has grown because of focusing on the market that was considered unbankable. I asked my friend, how come they have made all this profit in the context of capping of interest rates?
Yes.
I think that the issue about interest rates is an excuse by the government and an excuse by industry to ensure that they continue making the disproportionate profits that they've been making. And I think we must call them out, because what he should be talking about is actually the taxation. That's what is going to lead to disproportionate growth, not the interest rates.
Debarl, profit.
We'll come to you, Kiroro. Okay. Let's hear from Vincent Kimiso.
I wanted to agree with my colleagues that in terms of the implementation of the interest cap,
yes,
the banking sector have actually, there is a deliberate effort not to support the implementation of this law, and I want to agree with their position that that when we undermine policy, it's actually this is a country now quoting the constitution that is meant to be guided by the rule of law. If a law has been approved and passed by parliament, if there are deliberate efforts to undermine those efforts, it's good to bring them out.
Yes.
I also want to point out that for a long time, when you look at the profits of the banks, majority of it has been not on other, it's been from interest rates. So it also talks about the lack of innovation and the stronger reach out and products that ensures that we have profitability in the banking sector. If we are going to grow just by bank loans, if we are going to have profits just based on interests and not really the core responsibility of increasing access to finance so that we increase the wealth that then increases the financial flows, then there is need for broader reforms within our banking sector. I think, and then finally is also that even as we broaden this conversation, I think we need to also ask ourselves, why is it that we still have high cost of credit in our country? Because it is at now 14%. And I believe we when you compare to countries like Germany in the West, we have access to credit at, the cost of credit at single digits. Actually, the Kenyan government accesses credits on a single digit figure, the T-bills, the rate of T-bills. So my question is, why is it that the same dividend that the government is getting as it buys and accesses credit from the market, why is it that we are not seeing that extended to the very public that is supporting this government through taxation? So we need to broaden the conversation beyond just removing the interest rates or keeping it to the real issue, which is innovativeness and the core functions of banking, so that we don't just have them waiting for interest as the really key contributor of their interests, of their profits.
Right, thank you. And I'm holding court this morning, of course, with our panelists here, looking at a raft of issues and broadening the conversation as well. We want to see what we do have also from social media, just to read one or two there. Nash rebranded saying, my thought too, the maize farmers will be forced to sell our maize at cheap prices, yet the cost of production has been high. We have James Olo saying, Mr. Jason Braganza has a point. Sin taxes do change behavior. Alcohol and tobacco are addictive, so demand for them is not as responsive to price increases as, say, the demand for airline tickets. But it's still more responsive than common household goods. Also, we do have Tony here. Tony is saying that, Tony is up next, is saying that it's not a lie. We do not know God. We only think that we do, and this is in light of what we'll be discussing. And we have Gakuhu Tumi saying the most corrupt are the best Bible verse quoters, and even go to church every Sunday. Bible study, though well-intended, will do nothing to these criminals. We have also Odek. It is a stupid move that has been part of the problem. Instead of finding ways to enforce anti-corruption laws, they are bringing Bible studies, which is very naive and insensitive. What happens to non-Christians? Elud and his team should leave office. This is what Odeki is saying. And then we have John McFadden. ESCC is not episcopal. It is not a good men club. It is a combat group to fight corruption. Our good Archbishop Webukala has lost it. It's time we got value for money. And what are they talking about? This is a picture that we're talking about. The ESCC, of course, is now looking to go to the Bible, which I think is a good salutary move. The ESCC has embarked to use the Bible study to boost the Commission's fight against corruption. The Commission, chaired by retired Anglican Archbishop Eliud Obukala, launched the Bible study guide together with the interreligious sector yesterday. Study guide titled Integrity, a Weapon Against Corruption, will put to use by groups and individuals dealing with corruption matters. The Ethics and Anti-Corruption said on Twitter, the Bible study guide is intended to help Kenyans interact with the Bible and discover God's position on corruption and his direction on living corruption-free life. I know some of us, we might really smirk at this and say, oh, this is a simplistic way to fight corruption. But we need to see the undervalue or the underlying motive for this particular move by the ESCC. Maybe they've looked and they've seen jails is not a deterrent. Of course, the bails are not a deterrent. Maybe we need to also go to the Bible for the Bible thumpers. And I think we can hear from Kiro on this.
I will say something. But allow me to say profit by bank. A profit declared by a company is an opinion, not a fact.
It's an opinion.
It's an opinion. That's why they can change it this year to next year. The opinion that goes to the bank is not the same opinion that goes to the taxman. Anyway, GDP is not a good measure of anything.
Thank you. Can we go to the Bible because of time as well?
Let's go to the Bible. Now, religion is a difficult subject because it's guided by dogma, not by logic. So, with that, I see Webukara's influence in this decision. And I suspect that he is completely convinced that it would work, except it won't. Religion is the cause of every world war that we ever fought. It's a very difficult subject.
I know if we go to history, we won't get out of this studio.
Yeah.
I just because we're really
I'm just passing by.
Yes.
Yeah. Corruption is a decision made at the individual level. That is, I think, what Wabukala has now influenced EACC to try and consider, that persuade an individual not to go that route. It will work for some. It is not going to make an impact on the level of corruption.
You think so?
From the individual, we need to work back to the law. And back to the law, we had an attempt in the Constitution, chapter 6, because the threshold, before we say you cannot work for public, the threshold in this Constitution, chapter 6, article 73, is not conviction. It's not conviction, and this is very important. The Parliament has not given us an act, a workable act of Parliament that knocks you out because you have not demonstrated respect for the people.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Let's hear from, I've lost my count, or sequentially, where are we? After Kiriro?
I can speak after
Okay, fantastic.
Because I disagree with Kiriro. I think religion has an important place in society.
Yes.
A completely important place. I also agree with EACC that focus on religion and integrity would be useful for fighting corruption. But I disagree that that is their core mandate. Despite the fact that Archbishop Wabukala, whom I respect, is the former Archbishop of the Anglican Church, my church, I think he must realize he stopped being the Archbishop of the Anglican Church. He is now the head of the Ethics and Corruption Commission, whose core mandate is not to preach. His core mandate is to fight corruption. I say so because they seem to be focusing on peripheral things. They seem to be focusing now on teaching. They seem to be focusing on something they're going to do in my county in Homa Bay, which is a complete waste of time, called an integrity assessment test. The challenge we have in Homa Bay is accusations of graft. You don't deal with that by doing an integrity assessment, or worse, by going to teach them Bible study. I suspect the bulk of those people go to church on Sunday. You deal with it by focusing on your core mandate. Their core mandate is to investigate and ensure that the corruption suspects are brought to book. If you look at the last 3 months, that task has been done for them much more effectively by DCI and DPP. It's only then that they're starting to wake up. Now that they have woken up, let them not wake up and go to church. Let them wake up and work.
But should we also point accusatory fingers at EACC? Because what we are saying that the DPP has been doing, all of these cases that DPP has actually picked, there are cases that were lying idle on the table of Kirako Tobiko. But now we have a DPP who's new. He's actually picking up the cases that were taken there by the EACC.
No,
so it might look like the EACC were doing nothing, but the EACC were actually down on the ground investigating, and this were taken to the DPP. So DPP is trying to effect essentially what EACC have been doing on the ground.
The first is the bulk. If you look at the proportion of cases that have been taken to court, the majority of them have been investigated not by EACC but by DCI. Fact. The second, talk to people. Yesterday I was in a meeting with guys of counties. Talk to them and hear the kind of things that EACC do on the ground. It is not fighting corruption, and the least we say, I think with the least we talked about that, the better. But actually, instead, we require somebody to investigate EACC.
Maybe there's a deeper narrative that maybe we're missing with us. What Archbishop Wabukala is trying to do is change the mindset of Kenyans. That if we try to fight it with hammer and tongs and all this drama and handcuffs and jails, we're just having a band-aid solution. Maybe there's a deeper narrative that we need to broach that particular subject of national values and integrity, because essentially this is what they're talking about, integrity assessment and integrity also in school clubs from the very formative stages of our young people. Let's not miss the big, let's not miss the big mark. It could be an entry point of the EACC, not really with religion, because I know we can start a big debate about religion and why the Buddhist and Baha'i faith is not inculcated with this. What will they do? Will the Bible be the mark now to talk about corruption? Jason, I don't know what your thoughts.
Religion because I want to include everybody.
No, we can, because of time, because of time. And I know once you start, yes, we'll spend so much time. So I want to hear from Jason. Jason.
I think, what came to mind when I read this story, it's taking divine intervention to another level. But not to belittle it, I think there is something, and I want to agree with Collins here. I think there is something to be said because the moral fabric of our society is almost non-existent. The country that we live in, the country that we love very much, has become a free-for-all. The rule of law applies to some and not to others. The way we conduct our business, our activity, is very much a contradiction to what this book that was passed in 2010. It's very much a contradiction, and the approach might be slightly unconventional, but I think there is a point here to say that our moral fabric as a society has broken down, and there is something in religion and faith that can restore that. But, and the big but here is what Collins has said, is that the mandate of the EACC is not to be preaching to us. It's for it to go out there, investigate, implement laws and policies that can stem the tide of corruption that and graft that we are facing. So as much as I think from a philosophical point there might be something good there, I just think that by doing this or taking this sort of approach, he may have actually provided an opportunity for other things to slip very quickly, past, while the public is engrossed with this Bible studies. There might be cases or investigations that are sliding past his office with nobody knowing, and I think we need to be very caused with that as well.
Thank you, Jason. Vincent,
I will speak based on two authorities. One is that I have worked I worked previously at Transparency International fighting corruption. And then secondly, I'm the secretary of the Kenya Christian Professionals Forum. So I thought it is good to give authority to where I am speaking about this. And I think it is important for us to appreciate one thing, that when you are fighting corruption, you have to be ready to use all options. So the launch of the Bible study was, if you get the full narrative, it was a religious evangelicals who approached the ethics and anti-corruption, that can we work together using our tools as evangelicals in the fight against corruption. So the contextualization from a strategy perspective as EACC, you have to be ready to explore all options in fighting corruption. So I think, in my view, is what Collins has pointed out, is that let's read what EACC has done in context to a specific section of society that holds the Bible in high view. Our very constitution in its preamble even acknowledges the supremacy of God. So I don't want to paint the entire commission with one brush, that they might be out of their mandate, but I need to appreciate that they are ready to engage everybody. I remember seeing a documentary from EACC on working with the Muslim community on how to declare the corruption.
Thank you.
It's what is it? When you have what is it? The fighting maadili, as in we do everything within our faiths to promote the fight against corruption. So I think we need to see it from that dimension.
Thank you.
And not paint the entire initiative with one broad brush.
Kiriro, I won't give you time now, but I think we need another session for this particular discussion. I think you've laid it for us as well, but I'm really stuffed for time right now. Kiriro Wangugi, I want to thank you so much, who is a consultant, public affairs and policy. Also Jason Braganza, who is the Deputy Executive Director of Tax Justice Network Africa. Thank you for coming through. Collins Odote, who is of course a lawyer and also a columnist with the Business Daily. Thank you for coming through. And of course also a contributor here on AM Live, and also Vincent Kimosop, who is a lead consultant with Sovereign Insight and also expert on public policy. Thank you also for coming through. What does the Bible say about corruption as we're winding up? Just a few verses. Hosea 9:9, they sunk deep into corruption, as in the days of Gibeah. God will remember their wickedness and punish them for their sins. Also Isaiah 1:4, woe to the sinful nation, a people whose guilt is great, a brood of evildoers, children given to corruption. They have forsaken the Lord. They have spurned the Holy One of Israel and turned their backs on him. And finally, Galatians 6:8, because the person who sows to his own flesh will reap corruption from the flesh, but the one who sows to the Spirit will reap eternal life from the Spirit. And of course, we'll need Kiriro maybe to interpret this as a pastor. I want to thank him so much. Nonetheless, we'll have this particular discussion on why EACC is taking this particular way, and of course, we have to use every measure to try and fight corruption, which is actually taking this country down the tubes. Thank you very much for your valued company, and of course, we will also be hearing from John C. Maxwell. He's such a great leadership forum, leadership guru in the world, and he's here in the country, and we'll be relaying there for you. We'll be relaying that from you from Radisson Blue much later today. Living with Us is up next.